morning and welcome to the Friday, August 24th, 2018.
Oh, yeah.
Jan's tricking us.
Sorry about that.
Special meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard. Has the meeting been properly warned
Yes, it has.
for March 24th?
And for today.
Thank you. Today's meeting is to talk about the petition for a charter amendment to allow 16-year-olds to vote. When we came here, we were talking about this at the Tuesday meeting because the petitioners had requested that we put the item on the November ballot. Tuesday, we thought that that was a possibility. Subsequently, we have found out that that's not a possibility. And I'm going to explain why. And first of all, I want to apologize for all the confusion. We're now experts at how to do this. What you folks have done, you've done it right. You've gotten the petitions, submitted them to the town clerk. She has verified all the signatures. The next step is obviously the ultimate step, which is to get it on the ballot. Because this is a charter change, it needs to go through a different procedure than just the normal put it on the ballot. And there are requirements that the state makes people do. It's in state statute that we have to have 2 public hearings prior to the election. They have to be, the first one has to be no later than 10 days, and the second one is 30 days, and then 10 days after that. The little wrinkle in this whole thing is that they have to be noticed 30 days prior to the meeting, which would be fine in this case. You could do the first one, what's 30 days from today, which would be September 24th. The added glitch is early voting. Voting starts in the state of Vermont on September 21st, which means having a public hearing on September 24th doesn't work. The August 24th date, which we were talking about on Tuesday, was actually the day that information needed to be at the Secretary of State's office so that the ballots could be printed and distributed so that people could vote on September 21st, if that's making sense to everybody. So the upshot is, and again, the town attorney's here if we want to get more in depth, there is no way to get this ballot initiative on the November 4th ballot. What I want to propose today is the next election that it could be on is March. What I want to propose today is that we set the public hearings, the 2 public hearings. The first would be November 2nd, or I'm sorry, October 2nd, which would be the first meeting of the select board, and then do the other one 7 days later, which would be October 9th. That way we've got the public hearings going, everything's set, and we won't have any more ups and downs. Just one sec. I'm just trying to explain what we're going to do. So it will be all ready to go for March 5th, 2019. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, what's happened. It's really, the dates are governed by state statute, and we can't get out of that. We might want to, but we can't. And we're dealing with a charter change, which obviously also, after it's voted, if it's passed by the town, it has to be passed by the legislature. So there's a lot of things dealing with a charter change that are not in control of our control, because it's not a normal ballot petition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Only my concern or question, not that we can really, it sounds obviously that it's immovable, but is how do we clarify all of this somewhere where it just makes really clear linear sense to whoever else, not just this group, but to anyone else in the future who might say, okay, those are my steps, and might there be a checklist, for example, if someone's going to be submitting something as you would with a grant application, where one would say, do I have my signatures and did I turn it into this office? Did I make sure that they have 2 public meetings on the books? Like, is there something that we can just make very simple for people?
And I think
Actually, I wrote the same thing down on my list
With
for
no, like, legal jargon.
for the town meeting meeting article
Right.
for a charter change and for candidate select board, just to ask the town attorney and the clerk to put just a half page or even a 305 card
Simple.
of, this is what you have to
Simple
do, these are the
language,
dates and deadlines.
put it on our
Yeah.
website, put
So
it,
this
like,
doesn't
make sure
happen
it's.
again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speak briefly to that?
Sure.
So, yes, we will do that. Yes, we obviously should do that to avoid this kind of confusion in the future. The other thing that we'd like to do is encourage folks who pick that up and are following that to engage early with the town attorney around these processes, because there will be circumstances where, based on the particular nature of whatever the initiative is,
Sure.
It might be that in a particular instance, the general outline provides guidance that we don't have available for people today, so we need to provide that general outline. But we need to have the specifics addressed so that, for instance, if there's something about the wording that might need accommodation, if somebody's just looking at the checklist or the outline that we create and saying, okay, great, well, then I'm just going to gear myself to that first threshold moment so I can follow the rest of it. But if they haven't fully thought through everything that needs to be brought in that day, then we might bump into a problem like this again. So we'd like to encourage folks to come early, to use that as their guidance, but come and say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to follow this, and these are my dates that I'm going to be shooting for. Is that right?
And you can also include that language in there. I would,
Put it on-
or
put it on the
tests-
card, yeah.
Sure, that's a
Tests
good point.
for like with questions like, is this a charter change?
Right.
And in this case, it might be more challenging, or is this this change?
Exactly.
To contact X to make sure that you know the differences between, not that you would include all scenarios there, but something that would just say, here are the steps, but we want to add this caveat.
Yes,
And
absolutely
just-
right.
Yeah, and just to, I'm going to get to you in 1 sec, Rio. Just to put it in context, we would have had to have the signatures for this particular petition by July 20th in order to get it rolling, in order for it to be on the November ballot. So it was, when I think people do this, they have to even, none of us were, we didn't know this was happening, in July. So do you see what I mean? It's, for a charter change, it's different. So I think we just have to get people when they're thinking about it. And sometimes things just come up and you're not thinking about it until, So I think we just have to, but we do have a remedy. What we want to do is do it as quickly as possible, get the public hearings out of the way so we're not bumping against any more dates in March. But I'm going to have Rio wants to say something. Come on up to the mic, because you're on BCTV.
I just want to give you something.
Sure, thanks, Rio. Excuse me. Thank you.
So, the town attorney, Robert Fisher, wrote a memo to the select board, which I received from town clerk Mary Francis yesterday. And it says in the memo that that the statute does not contemplate the calling of a special town meeting when the proposal is made by petition. I read in the Vermont statutes annotated, Title 17, Chapter 55, Subchapter 2, Section 2645A reads, a municipality may propose to the General Assembly to adopt, repeal, or amend its charter by majority vote of the legal voters of the municipality present and voting at any annual or special meeting warned for that purpose in accordance with the following procedure. And the first step in the procedure is Section 2645A1, quote, a proposal to adopt, repeal, or amend a municipal charter proposal may be made by the legislative body of the municipality or by petition of 5% of the voters of the municipality, unquote. So I propose that we get in the signatures as soon as we can, then warn the soonest public hearings that we can, and then have a special election, a special town meeting for the youth vote. It says here in section 2643A, the legislative body may warn a special municipal meeting when it deems necessary and shall call a special meeting on the application of 5% of the voters. A special meeting shall be warned within 60 days of the receipt of the application by the municipal clerk. A voter may withdraw his or her name from the petition for a special meeting at any time prior to the signing of the warning by a majority of the legislative body.
Bob, do you want to address that for
Yes.
us?
So we looked at this, and there is certainly what the section here that isn't cited is section 2645A5, okay? In 2645, which is a section on charter amendments pursuant to the statute, it contemplates two different ways for such a charter amendment to come before the voters. One is that the select board, or the legislative body of the town, can, on its own motion, present a proposal that to be voted upon. Okay, if that's the case, they have every right to call a special meeting pursuant to 2643. Okay. When it is brought by petition, which is the other way to do it, 5% of the legal voters, section A5 says if the charter proposal is made by petition, this is where the hearing schedule is a little bit different between whether it's made by petition or made by the select board. But if it's made by petition, your second hearing has to be within 10 days of the first. And then it says after the warning and those hearing requirements are satisfied, the petition charter shall be submitted to the voters at the next annual meeting, primary, or general election. It does not say in that particular section at a special meeting. And it is my view that if they had contemplated the special meeting, they would have put it forth there, because the legislature was very specific to also put in that it could be at the next general election or primary, but they don't mention special meetings. So that's why the suggestion here is to, number one, you don't need to go out and get any more signatures. You've done that. That's been verified. It's on file at the town clerk's office, so the first two steps of what the statute requires have been met. The next step or steps are the two public hearings, and so the suggestion is to get those warned as soon as possible, the second one being within 10 days of the first. And then after that, it would go to the March 5th, 6th, first Tuesday in March for a vote by Australian ballot. It's only because of the early voting starting September 21st that there's no way for us to have those hearings completed prior to the early voting. So that's why we can't do that. But to address your question on the special meeting, I'm following what the statute says with regard to if it's made by petition, and after those hearings are done, it does not mention special town meeting.
Yeah, I do believe that right under the quote, the quotation from the Vermont statutes annotated, it says there's a little, there's another thing that's part of that quotation that does mention the special meeting under it.
Not in section A5 that I see.
Are you sure it's not section A5I, or, because I read that in the Vermont statutes online. And here in these quotations, it does say that a special meeting can be warned
in
by a petition.
Yeah. Not in 2645A, that's where it talks about submitting it to the legal voters at any annual or special meeting warned for that purpose. But then Section A goes into paragraphs 1 through 7. And that's where it differentiates between a proposal that's made by the select board versus a proposal made by petition. So A5 is the one that says if it's made by petition, your second hearing has to be within 10 days of the first, and then after you have your hearings done, then you submit it to the voters at the next annual, quote, at the next annual meeting, primary or general election in the form in which it was filed, except that the legislative body may make technical corrections. That's such a, wording change or something like that.
Hey, Rio, can I just ask you just a regular person question? Is there a particular reason why you want it on the November ballot as opposed to the March ballot? Because it still has to pass the legislature, and the legislature meets from January till May or June. So even if it's on the March ballot, you still have time. You're not missing the legislative session. I'm just asking for a...
Yeah, well, I heard that it takes a long time to get on the agenda for the legislature, and that if we waited until March, it might not even get on their agenda until 2020. Because there's only 2 months left right after.
I mean, I think that you told us that the last meeting that Jeanette White was behind helping you. And if that's the case, I think Jeanette, if she knows it's coming, could be working. And I'm not speaking for Jeanette, but the legislative session, I think if you were to have a conversation with her, obviously it's a charter change, but I'm just trying to figure out why, the legislature will still be there.
We are
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. We are just hoping to get it. We want to know that it will be able to get on this session, and if we wait longer, there's just more of a chance that it won't.
Oh yeah, Brandon.
I'm gonna say I have one question for Bob, and then I have a couple things I want to say to you, Rio. So we are interpreting that as an or situation, meaning because it was gone through the petition process, we no longer have the option to use the select board calls a special meeting option, right?
We can always call a special meeting.
You have every right to
Even though they went through the
propose a
petition.
charter amendment on your own, but
Yeah.
because it's now in by petition, you have to follow.
Good. Just wanted to clarify
Unless
that.
you go to the legal issue, which is a subject of a separate legal memo from a couple years ago, but you have to follow the procedure for putting that petitioned charter proposal to the voters.
Okay,
and then,
great.
so you have to have the hearings. So that doesn't preclude you from making another board charter amendment proposal.
Yep.
But you would then be potentially in conflict with one another.
Okay.
Or if it was the same one, how would you
Yep.
deal with that? But
I just wanted that clarified, mostly for the the listening audience.
yeah, in both situations, though, you have to have at least 2 hearings.
Yep.
I guess I don't quite know why, if it's only in a petitioned one where they say the second hearing has to be within 10 days of the first. I suppose if you made it on your own motion, you could have the first hearing has to be at least 30 days prior to your vote. So you could pick your vote and work backwards from that. But if you made it on your own motion, you could theoretically have that second motion or second hearing a day later or a month later or whatever. It's only when it's petitioned do they say it's got to be within 10 days.
Thank you.
But just one other thing that Rio has brought up here is, if you look at the timing, and even if it's a special town meeting, you're still beyond November. Because you have to warn a special meeting. So let's say you were coming with a petition for a bond article or something like that, and you wanted a special meeting. You have 60 days within which to warn it, and then the warning has not less than 30 nor more than 40 days out. So even so, if you have 2 hearings, and you have to have those hearings completed, and so if you're going for like the October 9th on the second hearing, to have that done and then go out 30 days, you're still past the November 6th.
Right.
So again, the timing, even if you were to contemplate a special meeting, which I do not think is, when it's petitioned,
Yeah.
you would think that, and I'm not saying that Rio's incorrect in pointing out what is a conflict in a statute.
No,
You have
she's done a great
subsection A
job.
that says regular or special meeting. You have A5 that doesn't mention special meeting, but then brings up the primary and the general election, which isn't mentioned in subsection A. So good job in pointing that out.
Very better
But when you
prepared.
are looking at the specific petitioned article, you follow the procedure for the petitioned article. And that's
Great.
simply what I'm saying.
Thank you very much for that. And then, Rio, I want to say, I think you did a really spot-on job. I think there's going to be a few lessons that we're going to learn and that we're going to push out to the public. And here's what I'm going to say. I would not recommend that you push for a special meeting. And this is me speaking as somebody who's run for office and somebody who used to do marketing. People are creatures of habit. If you can't get on the November ballot, you want to get on the March one, because that's when people are planning to vote. Like, you're not going to pull the same amount of people, and you want to really be able to pull people for this, you're going to need good backing. So you have time to kind of market this between now and October for those 2 meetings, build your base. You could even drop off around Thanksgiving and the December holidays, and then build it back up. People are going to start pulling out petitions and running for office. That closes at the end of January, and that's a great time to then do another social media and other push to get the kind of momentum back up that you built up by October, back up for the March ballot. I would really recommend, people are creatures of habit, even though we don't want to always say that. I'd recommend sticking with one of the 2 dates. It looks like the November date's a disaster, and I'm really sorry that happened, because when you're ready to push, it's always scary to think you're going to drop that momentum. But I think if you're really strategic with your marketing, you'll get the same amount of people out for the March vote. That's just person-to-person advice. And also, I would throw in that I have a feeling there's at least 1 or 2 of us here that could reach out to the legislature on your behalf and make sure that you're not just lost in the ether.
Does anyone else on the select board have any comments?
No, I actually think this is a really great opportunity and an eye-opening opportunity to encourage, to bring the next generation of, like, to keep them involved in the local process and inspired and encouraged. So thank you so much for that, and for reminding us of our other constituents, because they may not have the right to vote now, but they are going to be
That's right.
our future politicians and different movers and shakers. And so thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
I think I'll just say that I'm really jazzed by this democratic process that we see happening before us, and I'm of 2 minds, because I'll set aside my personal feelings about the wisdom of allowing 16-year-olds to vote, because that's not the issue we're looking at here. And that's a correct issue for voters to look at. But for me, it comes down to democratic process. I want to be here to support you guys in your democratic petition. But the democratic process of having these meetings beforehand, the warned meetings where we talk about it as a public body, are also a very important democratic process. And so rather than being sort of crossing the T's and dotting the I's and a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo, I don't really look at it that way. I look at it as also a very important part of democracy to uphold that tradition that is put upon us by the legislature. So that's the two things that we're trying to weigh here, I think. And so I just wanted to get it out there that the final thing I'll say is that we are 5 volunteers up here, and some of the stumblings you see is because we are, understandably, I will say, that we are in the midst of many other issues that we're dealing with. These things don't come around that often, so we make mistakes, But what I would encourage people that are bringing forward petitions is to not automatically assume that a board like this is in opposition to anything the people are bringing forward, because we're also the people.
Right.
And we want to support that. And I think out in social media, I saw several statements that were like us versus them. And I'd love to see it we instead of us versus them, because I don't see it that way at all. If we've stepped up to be volunteers in these positions, and we want everyone else in this town to know that we're also the citizens and we support democracy. But we have obligations being on the board. So
Piggybacking on that, because we're here for you, I would always say, come to one of us if you're about to do this, so we can help. If you come to me, for example, and say, I'm about to do this petition, the first thing I'm going to do is go to Peter and say, what do they need to do to be successful so I can pass this on and best help them? And then I'm gonna get all of these dates, all of this information. He's gonna go to Bob. Don't be afraid to use us. Don't be afraid to use Peter. Don't be afraid to use, we're all hired by the town. Don't be afraid to use Hillary. We're all either elected or hired with your money for you. We're here for you. So it's good that you had a different attorney help. That's totally great to have your own independent, but remember that we're at your disposal. And that means Bob too.
So does it make sense, we'll warn the first hearing for October 2nd, which is the regular select board meeting. Then I want to make sure we'll do the next one on October 9th, which would be a special select board meeting. So what I would love, obviously there have to be 3 of us at that meeting because it's a special meeting.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we all put it on our calendars.
I can do that.
October 2nd?
Oh yeah, please come on.
Please do.
Wait, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm getting all excited about sending the
I
thing.
just think that it's quite unfortunate that even though we turned in our petitions after the possible time to get it on the November ballot for the public hearing warnings and everything, we didn't hear about the time restrictions for the public hearings until yesterday.
Yeah.
And we had worked with, I know that Peter Elwell was helping us out for a tiny bit, and Hillary Francis has helped us out a lot, and Robert Fisher has looked it over, and none of them told us about the deadlines for the hearings until yesterday. So
That is unfortunate.
And
I'm sorry
I think,
about that.
yeah, we all apologize for that. And I think what happened, none of us realized it, quite frankly, until yesterday, because we weren't factoring in the early voting. I mean, to be honest with you, that's what happened.
Go ahead.
I just,
Sorry.
that's the crux of it, and we all admit the mistakes were made, and we apologize to you folks, but it wasn't intentional. There was this early voting thing that was never factored in, and now we all remember that. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add an apology directly on behalf of us who are not the volunteers, but in fact the folks who work on this sort of stuff full time. We don't work on this type of business every day either. And frankly, the one thing I would ask you to appreciate and hope that the public could appreciate is we made mistakes here, and unfortunately we made a few of them. Each time it was out of attempting to move very quickly with you, because this was all happening right before the deadline for today's deadline to submit the materials to the state for the ballot language for all the different municipalities all over the state. We saw that right away when you first contacted Hillary. We saw that August 24th was when all this had to be done by. And we started working really fast to try to do the things that needed to be done to get to that deadline. And we missed some things in that. And so the idea that's come up about a checklist, I think is really great, not just for everyone out in the public to have something you can resource, but frankly, so that we'll be having a tool that we can use without going into, line by line, fresh review of the statute. The next time that we have one of these come before us, because it's regrettable, particularly to me, that we had a teeter-totter kind of effect that was going on here. We had a day or two when it was all looking very promising, and then a day or two when it was looking very disappointing, and then back looking promising and then back disappointing. We've landed here in a place where we have a really clear path forward, and it's not the one you initially wanted, and it's not the one we initially thought we could provide to you. But I just want to make sure that you understand that the reason we had so much confusion is because we rushed. We kept trying to accommodate a very short timeline, and we made mistakes in that process.
And you're helping. I want to echo some of the things that have been said already. This process is actually helping us to have a better reflection of how we need to better serve and maybe ensure that everyone can be a part of this process. So again, I think it definitely is. Yes, it is unfortunate, and it is also something we can learn from. And also to echo what Brandy has said about marketing. I also come from a marketing and PR background, and sometimes you do find yourself and you're challenged by your original plans to go in a certain path, foiled. But I do definitely think that people, at least around here, they have it in their minds for March and voting, and I do think that this can be an opportunity. And again, yes, please come to any of us, maybe use this even as an opportunity to better educate us. I know I'd like to be better educated about this initiative, so I think this could be something that you can leverage. It gives you power and time, a little more time.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Did you want to make a comment?
Sure. Are you done?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't want to kick Rio away from the mic, so she can stay as long as she wants.
Hello. My name is Mark Tully. I live in Brattleboro. I do some contract work for Brattleboro Common Sense, helping them with a couple of projects, including helping Rio out with this. Just want to point out a couple things. I'm glad this has been an educational experience for you. Meanwhile, this initiative remains derailed. I just want to put, if I understand the town attorney correctly, there's one set of rules for when it's brought by petition, which is preventing a special election, in his opinion, and another set of rules for when it's brought by the board. I just want to point out the only reason we were here Tuesday and the only reason we're here now is because the town attorney declared this inappropriate to bring by petition. We brought it by petition. Town attorney told us, well, I'm sorry, this is not a process where you bring it by petition. This is a process where you bring it before the board. And now the opinion is based on, now the conclusions are based on this being something brought by petition. So it was taken away from the petition process to bring it before the board. Now it's being put back into the petition process to be governed by the rules for that. That itself is a contradiction and one of the unfortunate traditions. So if you're going to decide is not being brought by a petition process, that's the inappropriate process, then you shouldn't go back and then have it be governed by the rules for the process you just declared it's not, right? That's one thing that I just want to say. Another thing is that has also been pointed out, there are contradicting statutes that contradict each other. I would submit that might be only the beginning when you read statutes on the local and state level, where you find statutes that contradict each other, condition each other, perhaps even overrule each other. We were operating here on Tuesday with a very selective analysis of a particular statute. Now we're here 3 days later operating off of a newfound set of statutes that condition or overrule the ones we were operating on Tuesday. I don't consider this a comprehensive legal analysis for that reason. I think given a few more days, we might find something else in the statutes, perhaps even the same statute as Rio was referring to, that contradict and overrule this. Is what I'm saying is that this has proven itself to be far from a comprehensive legal analysis, and I don't think the vote of this board today should reflect a deference to the current interpretation issued at the 11th hour yesterday, any more than apparently you should have been relying on the completely different analysis the town attorney says is now completely mistaken that we were operating on Tuesday, right? So for that reason, if Rio's proposal stands to call a special election, I would say that because the town attorney has ruled this or has concluded this is not something that's appropriately bought by the petition process, that it should no longer be ruled by the rules of a petitioning process. If it stands, I support that. I hear you. I hear you all saying perhaps Jeanette White or Becca or other people would give us a break and put it on the legislative agenda, but we don't know that either, you know? So I just want to support Rio's decision. Anything Rio decides, I would support, and all the people who signed the petition, the 5% who spoke in favor of advancing this to the ballot, including people who don't think 16 and 17-year-olds should vote, but believe in democracy, you know, should persuade your vote. Unless your decision right now is to no longer take the vote that was warned, and you're actually gonna take a vote.
We're not taking a vote. What our plan today is to set the public hearing. But can I just let Bob, before you get too down, you made some things about
Sure.
what Bob gave you. I just don't want that to get lost.
I just want to be clear, there has been nothing from the town attorney standpoint that is saying what is an appropriate petition or not as far as the merits of what's being acted. If a petition comes in and it's got the requisite 5%, we then take the statute and we have to follow a procedure for petitioned articles. So it's not taking it away from being a petition and having the board make a proposal. All I'm pointing out is that in the charter amendment statute, there are two mechanisms. One is by petition, one is by the board. The board has not made a proposal here to amend the charter. So that any part of that process that goes to how it's done by the board is simply not relevant to this particular process. This was a petitioned proposal for a charter amendment, so we follow the procedure for a petitioned article. And so the only memorandum on this is the one that went out, we worked on it really Wednesday, but I think you received it yesterday. And we haven't changed our opinion there. Any mistake was when this was brought to the town clerk's attention. The town clerk contacted me and we were trying to figure out how could we get it such that we could get things by today, which is the date by which anything needs to go to the Secretary of State's office to be printed on the November ballot. How could we make that work? If there's a mistake being made, it's that we perhaps buoyed expectations that we were trying to look at that. But then, as the town clerk reminded us, we have early voting starting September 21st. There's no way that we can have two public hearings prior to September 21st. And if we'd started a month or so earlier, we could probably do that. But that's why, and I echo what the board is saying, that when folks have petitions, the earliest that they possibly are thinking about this and can come to the town, we're happy to review it. Because if it comes in by petition, we're not, there may be legal issues. I'm not going to deny that there are legal issues with regard to what a petition is asking or not asking. But the procedure for that is set forth in statute. And so if we can get all of the procedural, it's a lot easier to have a debate and a vote on the merits of something when everybody has agreed on the procedure. And that's what I think we're trying to suggest today. And we're very sorry that there's no way to have those public hearings prior to when early voting starts.
Thank you for that clarification. I would suggest that as well as in the future spelling out these processes as you do. It's always a good idea, you know, that perhaps part of that might involve at least a little bit of burden on the town government to have an obligation to notify. Each of these notifications have come exactly when it's too late to act on them. And the select board, or maybe nobody, currently has the authority to bend the rules. Perhaps you do, perhaps you don't, a little bit. Obviously, there's many days between now and September 21st. Technically, you could physically hold these meetings. I'll defer to that. The current statutes and the limits of your authority prevent that from happening. But I just suggest in the future that if all of this notification comes too late, that the select board and others be given the authority to bend the rules a little bit. And perhaps that's something to bring to the legislature as well.
Yeah.
And that's more than I had to say when I
That
came up
sounds
here.
good to me.
Thanks. And I would encourage again what we've all said, because in order to, none of us are thinking of November right now. But in order for this to get on the November ballot, or anything that wanted to get on the November ballot, we would have had to have the petitions in hand by July 20th. So I just want to put that out there because so everybody else thinking about this realizes it's a longer process than you just assume it is. But we've all learned this. So, you know, people out there who are thinking about petitions, think ahead. Not that you folks didn't, but I'm just telling everybody else, because it's a longer process than I think we all realize. Is everybody, David?
Yeah, I'm glad that this information has all come out, and I'm glad to hear your perspectives on this. And I think things are going to change, but ultimately, whether this succeeds or not depends on how well you make the argument that it's a good thing. And I don't think it really matters much when the vote happens. It's how well you can make that argument. And so I guess that's all I want to say. So you've got to win. You've got to sell it anyway. So don't worry. Don't feel so badly about not being able to have the vote right when you wanted it. And also another thing I think that's going to come as this is that we're going to be pretty animated in making sure that the process goes ahead much more smoothly than it has so far.
Does anyone else? So does it make the earliest, we're going to do the public hearings in the earliest possible dates, which would be October 2nd, and then the second one, October 9th. And October 7th will be at the regular select board meeting.
You mean second? Second.
What am I saying? I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm so sorry. I'm so confused with all these dates.
It's okay.
Tuesday, October 2nd at 6:15 p.m., which would be during our regular select board meeting. The second one would be Tuesday, October 9th. And I'm assuming we'd all like to do it at the 6:15, the regular select board meeting, so the public
keep it standard.
can come. Does that make sense? And the meetings will be warned when, Jan? Would it be a week from now, or?
By October 31st.
August.
I mean, August 31st.
Oh, gosh,
By August, next week,
A lot of
we will,
dates.
next week we'll send the
Fresh
warning.
cup of coffee for everybody.
So,
Yes, right.
Not me, it'll put me to sleep.
So by a week from today, the meetings will be warned.
Correct.
So we're all,
On a week from today.
yes, a week's in the
But you can't
just sort
warn
of
it
reinforcing
today
just how-
because you'd be more than 40
40
days.
days.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So a week from today. Wendy,
I just want
please don't ask us a confusing question.
I'm going to ask the most confusing question. I'm writing this up today, so I want
Yeah.
to make sure I get the dates right. So it is correct that the first hearing is on October 2nd and the second hearing is a week later during a special select board meeting?
Correct.
That is
Yep.
correct.
Thank you. At what time?
6:15.
Our standard on
Yeah.
both days.
Yes, both days would be
It's a
6:15.
weird time, but that's our normal time, so we figured
People
that-
are creatures of
It is normal around.
And they will be right here. Everything's going to be here.
And then the
So-
next thing after that is it will be, the select board will have taken care of all of its responsibilities under this statutory timeline, and then it will be included in the warning for the town meeting election. That action won't actually occur until January, but
And the-
everybody will know based on these public hearings that that's where it's headed. The warning, because of, again, these timelines of,
Yeah.
not less than nor more than a certain number of days that the statutes require, means that it'll be the very end of January, as it always is, that we're warning
Yeah.
the March election.
Yeah, and the March
And
election.
this will be part of that.
Yeah, March election is on Tuesday, March 5th.
Correct.
So that's the next, after the October days, the next day that this will be up to the public would be Tuesday, March 5th.
There is early voting.
Oh, that's right, early voting.
And I have the date somewhere in here of when that starts, so.
This is the joys of living in a Dylan's Rules state also.
God.
Early ballots are available starting Wednesday, February 13th.
So Wednesday, February 13th, early voting starts.
March
And election day is March 5th, 2019.
Maybe someday Dylan's Rules should
Okay.
be like looked at.
Okay,
I mean,
thank
I'm
you.
not gonna look at them.
Hey, Rio, thank you, and thanks for doing such a good job. And
Different system.
we'll get this right, and we'll see you October 2nd.
Thank you for all your hard
Good
work,
work.
Rio and Mark.
Thank you.
Do we want to
others,
adjourn?
I'm sure,
Would we like to adjourn?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
I gotta go back to work. I can't be stuck in a meeting all day.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Bye.
Adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so Patrick,
Nobody's opposed?
I'm headed to.
Nobody's opposed.
Sure.
We're